So, ancient man, and we've been alluding to this already, but ancient man, are we created in the image of God, or did we evolve from ape-like ancestors? And that's what we have to ask ourselves. And does caveman equal ape man? And it's a big resounding no. Now see, here we have something that is real, that people lived in caves, and they painted, and they made musical instruments. And here we have what's called artistic license. And that just means that they found a few bones, and they take those few bones, and then they make this ape man here. Okay. So did they find anything like this? No, they haven't found anything like this. But they're again, this artistic license. They're gonna take a few bones, skulls, things like that, and they're gonna create this creature. But there's no proof for it at all. But what we do see, of course, in these caves is a lot of sophistication here, a lot of intelligence. And here's an example. I'm going to read this to you. Now, keep in mind that they have 40,000-year-old flutes, and that would be wrong. You know, according to the chronological of the Bible, that would be wrong dates. But this is interesting what they say. Archaeologists Wednesday reported the discovery last fall of a bone flute and 2 fragments of ivory flutes represented the earliest known music making in Stone Age culture. They said the bone flute with 5 finger holes found at Holzforst Cave, this is in Germany, in the hills of West Ulm, was by far the most complete of the musical instruments so far recovered from the caves. A 3-hole flute carved from mammoth ivory was uncovered a few years ago at another cave, as well as 2 flutes made from the wing bones of a mute swan. In the same cave, archaeologists also found beautiful carvings of animals. All right, so what we see here is, this is intelligence, isn't it? So they're taking, a lot of them are bird bones, and they know exactly where they're going to put those holes in order to make this musical instrument. And then some of them are ivory, so that's going to require a different kind of sophistication, isn't it? Because it's not hollow, is it? So they're going to have to drill this hole and make it hollow in order to be able to utilize it as a musical instrument. Okay? And this will make more sense too as we go on. And beautiful, another thing they find in these caves are wall paintings. Now look at this here. Now this is called sophistication. These are amazing. You know what's really interesting about this one here? Is that, so picture yourself inside a cave, okay, and you have a big roaring fire. Well, as the light flickers, it makes it look like this horse is running, because the way it flickers like a and so it looks like it's running. Now, would a caveman, a brute caveman that they say, that evolution say would be able to come up with this? No, there's no way whatsoever. And just see, here's cattle here they have. And you know what's interesting is they created them, a lot of them 3D. And actually 3D because they used rocks that were sticking out and they painted right over them, the middle part of it, to make it look 3D-like. And I love this because this man is pointing, they're in a cave, inside a cave, someone's taking this picture, and this is on the ceiling here of this cave. And so he's pointing to something specifically in here. So here we have the colors. There's lots of variety of colors. Now, how did they figure that out? Whether they use certain pigments and all that, soils and all that in order to create the colors. And so that's going to take a good amount of intelligence, isn't it, to be able to figure that out. And then, of course, you see up there that's just a good idea of a 3D bowl that they would have made. And there's several of these. This is just a small amount of those paintings. Yes?
Okay, so if people believe that people evolved from apes to humans, wouldn't like animals have evolved also? Because those look just like the animals we have today.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And again, you don't see that in the fossil record either.
Yeah.
So we should find some type of transitions between whether it's a human or whether it's an animal or even a bug, but they don't. Now you might find some creatures that are bigger than others, but they're still, like horses. You might find different, we have a different variety of horses now, different sizes. They find different varieties of of various sizes that have horses in the fossil record, but they're still a horse. They're not something else. And so that's what we have to point out. So that's a good question. And so it's animals that we would be familiar with. Okay, any other questions? Comments? Good. So now, if you think about some of the other achievements of man, it's really powerful in that modern man and engineers, they look at some of these things and they think, how in the world did they do this? Because a lot of them are thinking from an evolutionary mindset. They're thinking, well, things are supposed to be simple and move to more complex. But that's not what we see in ancient history, and particularly the achievements of ancient man. And just some of these here, real quickly, we have like Stonehenge over here on the right, upper right-hand corner. They're still not sure exactly what it was for. Maybe it's some type of an astronomical chart. But what the point needs to be made is that this is several thousand years old, and these bluestones came from a good 200 miles away. How did they get them there? And then to be able to set them up in the spherical shape that they are. So even if we don't figure out why they are there, what they used them for, it's amazing that they even got them there and put them up like they did. Easter Island, which is example of, we still don't know what necessarily these were used for, these particularly idols, but they weighed tons and tons, and they were carved and they moved upright and very sophisticated. And then Machu Picchu, which is in Peru, I don't know if you've heard of Machu Picchu, but it's a fortress that's on top of a very high mountain in the Andes Mountains in South America. How did they do this? How did they get all of the material up there in order to build this huge city on top of the mountain? And then one of my most favorites is the Nazca Lines. I don't know if you ever heard of the Nazca Lines. This is the Atacama Desert of southern Peru. And what's interesting about this is that these are only visible from the air. But these Nazca Indians, they lived from around the time of Christ to about AD 500. Way before the Wright brothers had figured out gliders and then planes. Well, what they're finding out is these Indians were very, they had a great knowledge of making balloons. And they say that they buried a lot, they would put their dead bodies in these balloons and they would send them out to the sea, out to the ocean. That's where they would be buried. But there are several. What is this creature you think? Is it a bird? It's a bird, right? And there's a spider and there's a monkey and there's other, and then some of them are just straight lines. You know what's interesting? Is that you can go, if you went to this area, and that's a dream of mine, on my bucket list is to go to this area, that Atacama Desert is one of the most flattest, driest areas of the whole world. If you were standing next to one of these lines, you wouldn't even realize it. And so here's an area where it's so well preserved, and it would only have been visible from the air. How did they do this? This is ancient man. Again, it's ancient man, not primitive man. Primitive man would be more the evolutionary mindset. Okay, so that's fun. And then how about writing? There was a farmer back in Syria in 1975 was plowing his field, and he hit a rock and he turned it over, and it had this all strange writing on it. We know that it's cuneiform writing. And so with this cuneiform writing, he uncovered inadvertently a huge library, 15,000 tablets that were found. And what is interesting is that it predates Moses by 1,000 years. And so writing had been around for a long time. And then how about China? You know, the Chinese invented the ancient characters nearly 4,500 years ago. Okay, and that's what they call Chinese writing, is characters. And a good Chinese person would know about 4,000 of them. They would be really intelligent if they knew about 4,000 or so. Probably average Chinese probably is about 1,500, 1,200, or 2,000, somewhere around there. So they invented the characters independent of the ancient Sumerian and Egyptian writings. So we're talking about different civilizations here, but they're very sophisticated and very intelligent. You know, God's word tells us when and why and how all the nations began.